Mr. Speaker, every so often there comes along a policy so misguided, so self-destructive, so just utterly stupid that it has catastrophic consequences before it is even adopted. Such is the case with the newly proposed wealth tax in the state of California. A proposal that is the height of folly, the height of insanity. The proposal would seize the assets, 5% of the net worth of citizens of our state who are purported to have a net worth over $1 billion. Of course, that will simply be the first line that is drawn with inevitably lower net worth levels ensnared in the future. This measure, which would be adopted this November and put into effect next year, has a peculiar provision in it stating that it would apply even to people who are no longer residents of the state at the time of its enactment. It would apply to anyone who was a resident of California up until January 1st of this year, even though it doesn't take effect until January 1st of next year. So, those who would be affected by it got word that this is coming, and guess what they did? They made sure that they were not here as of January 1st of this year. For example, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google, have relocated from California because one analysis suggests that under this proposal, the government could seize $60 billion from each of them. There are reports now that already $1 trillion in net worth has exited California simply in anticipation of this policy being adopted. They simply can't take the risk. One person with knowledge of the affected individuals said that 80 to 90% of them either will leave the state or have left already. Not to mention those who don't quite meet that threshold but know that they will be next, who have already left or are looking at an exit strategy. The consequences of this growing exodus cannot be overstated when it comes to the future of our state. Number one, with all of these high net worth individuals leaving, they are of course taking all of the taxes that they pay with them, so that the state treasury no longer receives anything. Now, obviously, this is a drain on the treasury. It would be in any state, but in particular in California, because of the unusual extent to which our state relies on the highest earners. In some years, our state budget, our state income tax revenue, gets 50% of its total revenues from the top 1% of earners. So when you see those people leaving the state, it means that the house of cards that is our state's finances will come tumbling down. We also should note the impact this is going to have on the startup community in California, which is so central to our state's identity and vitality and economic prosperity. It's so central to what has made California such a vital part of the American economy and such a driving force in progress all around the world. But because this proposal would seize liquid assets, would demand 5% of an individual's net worth, even though they're assessing assets of all kinds, what that would mean for a startup that has a very high paper value, based simply upon the way that startups receive their value, or their valuation, for example, based upon a multiple of an initial seed investment, then essentially you would have startups that would be forced to liquefy their assets or would simply not be able to pay this bill. And so it would no longer be viable to be a startup in California. The entire ecosystem would cease to function as it does now. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that this exodus has been an ongoing phenomenon in California. It's not just limited to those who are of a high net worth. For the 6th straight year, U-Haul has just ranked California as #1 in the country in outbound U-Haul rentals, in people leaving the state. And it's usually not the wealthiest people. It's people who simply can't afford to get by in California because of the inordinately high cost of living. But this proposed wealth tax would take this trend to an entirely new level in a way that would make it so California is a failed state, is no longer viable as a political entity. That is why we need to make sure that this provision does not pass, and importantly, we need to make sure that the unconstitutional scheme whereby former residents would be ensnared is not allowed to even begin to be executed. So that is why I am working on legislation here in the House of Representatives, federal legislation, to preempt that provision, which is unconstitutional, I believe, under the Commerce Clause, but we need to have express preemption in law to make sure that, at the very least, people do not feel the need to leave in anticipation of this measure or a future such measure passing. So now that we've discussed this absolutely insane proposal,